We're gonna wait a minute here to let everyone log on, and we'll probably have people logging on afterwards as we roll as well. So, and Amit, we're also recording this, so we'll cut this to the right. We'll cut it down, and then put it online. All
Sounds
right,
good.
yeah. We'll get started. Thank you for joining us. My name is Hubert Zaitchik. I run Health Wildcatters, and today we're here as the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs Dallas chapter meetup of the quarter, and we like to have somebody here that's in a physician entrepreneur that's seen a few things and then have a conversation. Also creating connections. Obviously, all of you on the SOPE network are always invited to our Health Wildcatters events as well. So there's a lot of cross connectivity. However, the unique thing about SOPE is that it really is first and foremost for physicians and physician entrepreneurs as well. So that's kind of a unique feature of that group. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Amit, and then Amit and I will have a conversation, and then we'll take any questions, and you can put them in the comment box as well, and then I will manage it from there. So first of all, the formal part. So thank you, Amit, for joining us. And a quick view at Amit's bio. He's a board certified in cardiovascular medicine and interventional cardiology. He got his degree at Baylor College of Medicine at the Texas Medical Center and stayed at Baylor to complete his training in internal medicine, and then his fellowship in general cardiology and interventional cardiology at Houston Methodist, the DeBakey Heart and Vascular Center, and the Texas Heart Institute. Dr. Manhas takes a holistic approach to cardiovascular care and firmly believes in diet and exercise, and the calming effects of single malt whiskey. Sorry, we had the benefit of having a quick free preview here, convo. Beyond this, he has a special interest in the treatment of advanced coronary artery disease using atherectomy and circulatory support. He also performs PFO closure for the reduction of stroke risk in patients with this condition. So thank you, Amit, for joining us today.
Thanks, Hubert. Thanks for having me. I think that's a very accurate synopsis of what I do in my day job, and kind of my journey through medical education and how we can help people. And I would say in the most, sort of classic medical kind of sense, and bringing technology and direct patient care. I would say that sort of represents half the story, and the other half of the story is what you guys do. Passion for innovation, looking for new ways to apply cutting edge technology, and just the excitement of being part of things that are evolving and changing quickly. And so that, again, I appreciate the invitation, and I'll take it as an opportunity to kind of recap where I'm at in my career. So I kind of called it the halftime report because I recently turned 50. With that milestone, spent a lot of time reflecting on my life and career, spent a lot of time going back to different stages and visiting with friends from every stage of my life. I'll also say that is in the practice of medicine, I'm also somewhat mid-career, having been doing this for about 16 years and training for another 10 or 11 years on top of that. You feel you're kind of like in the middle of the journey. And with that, you get some gray hairs, you have some wisdom and insight, but you still have a little bit of spunk left, and hope to do a few more things before you hang it up. So that's kind of how I think about where I'm at right now. I love the idea of connecting with other physicians who see different aspects of healthcare through their own unique lenses and perspectives. And obviously, when you put those different stories together, you can have novel solutions, you can have a bigger impact, you can have more resources, at your fingertips to solve big problems. And I think understanding, the size of problems, how you should attack them and approach them has been part of the journey for me over the last, so many years. And I'd like to kind of touch on some of those experiences the good, the bad, and kind of what's cooking right now for me. So yeah, if that sounds like a good
Yeah.
launching point, we can get into it.
Yeah, we'll do that, and I'll just add that Amit and I have known each other for a number of years. Guy, you might know better than I do, but I know you were poking
What,
around.
10 years or so? Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
some innovation. It probably was before we moved to downtown, right? I mean, because it was, yeah, and so that goes a while back, and so it's like you said, it's an important thing with who you surround yourself with, and you know, before you know it, you're in the 50s, and you look around, and so those are the people I associated with, and it sure is fun if those are quality people and you can still connect with them and have something in common with them, and possibly do stuff together. So
Yeah,
I this is all about you, so
yeah.
I
Well,
hand it back over to you.
perfect. No, thank you. So, more about myself. This is a tour of everywhere I've been. So, I grew up in Houston, so that's why I ended up doing a lot of my medical training there. But coming out of high school, as you know, we're very bright-eyed, leaving high school, wanting to see the world and sort of define our own journey, kind of get out there and you just kind of leave the past behind, become your own person, right? So that's a lot of what being, a young adult is. And so for me, a big part of that was where I went to my undergrad. So I went sort of far away for my perspective, maybe not as far as coming from Europe or something, but I went to Berkeley. And so the trip out to California was the beginning of sort of the process of exploration, of getting to experience innovation firsthand. And it left me with some big, strong impressions, which I think are still relevant even today. So, again, we've all been there. So we're talking to a lot of physicians in this group. But those early years, that's when the mind is very fresh and you're very open to new ideas. It's the young energy, right? So when I went out there, you have to think this is the Bay Area in the 1990s. And it was a very dynamic time. Companies were that are now sort of household names. Even then, they were very large, but they were establishing their dominance in the U.S. economy and in the technology sphere. Company like Oracle, Apple had reinvented itself. HP was very dominant. Google in the late 90s just came on the scene. And so, I'm there, kind of just exploring, doing the undergrad thing, trying to learn as many different things as I could. And I ended up going to Genentech for like a summer internship, which I liked a lot. And I was a biochemistry major, and I was seeing the application of a lot of textbook work and laboratory work turning into a big commercial operation. And at that time, Genentech was still small. It was 1,500 or so employees. We had a decent sized campus, but it wasn't the Goliath, that it was eventually going to become. So it's well established, but still had that flavor of like a new company, a growing company. And I got to see it. So that was a good experience for me, and I learned a lot of things there. So we were working in the area of stem cell stimulation. We were trying to make platelets, make patients develop more platelets using different proteins. And that was sort of the project, which was really fun. But there was an insight there that I think is relevant throughout my career and to anyone who wants to go into entrepreneurship, because as I was doing work in the lab, I had tremendous mentors, very intelligent people above me. But I realized at the time that we didn't get to decide the project. The project was decided at a higher level, something above where I was immediately working, and even my immediate bosses were working. And the flavor I got out of that, or the feel I got out of that, was that you needed autonomy. You needed to decide your project and decide the direction you wanted to take your work. And that was a very, very valuable thing. To get that autonomy, you had to be very, very high up in the company, or you had to strike out and do your own thing. And this was sort of the take-home lesson. And I want that to be, if we had to make bullet points about what I'm going to talk about, that would be one of the key bullet points. Is you have to find a way to achieve that autonomy. Otherwise, you end up spending a lot of years working for other people, and it can be gratifying, but you won't necessarily find the satisfaction that you're looking for as an entrepreneur. So autonomy is difficult, it's expensive, it's personally expensive sometimes, but it's so super rewarding. So, and you may think, well, how does, healthcare fit into that, or how does medicine fit into that? But even from that stage, you could feel that a doctor has more autonomy about what they do than someone who works for a corporation. And that's a very critical point. And I think it keeps kind of coming up in how healthcare is managed, how it's delivered, where its ills are today, and where there's opportunity, I think, for healthcare to be better, is to recapture some of the power of that autonomy of the physician. Again, fantastic experience. What I'll say is, with all that, it was a great time. It was the 90s, etc. I didn't know it, so you're 18 to 22. You have no idea. You have no idea this is the epicenter of the future of Silicon Valley and of all American technology for the next 40 years. You're just a goofy kid going to college, as were many people around you. I'll argue that that's also an important observation. You never know when you're at the center of the storm, when you're in the most innovative time or place. And I'll say you could be there right now, that we literally could be in Dallas, in this community, and you go to the universities around here, and the hunger they have to establish their reputation, the passion of the students and the people working in things. You could be in the next Bay Area, and it could be right here, and you won't know it, and for another 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, and you look back and say, wow, all those companies came out of this one ecosystem. So I think of it as also kind of an interesting and optimistic kind of tale, is that you could be in the eye of the storm right now. And so always look at that opportunity around you, network with the people around you, believe deeply in your team and your people, and you'll be really impressed with what happens that comes out of that. Anyway, so that's sort of my thoughts on the college experience in the Bay Area. I know you were probably just up there with JP Morgan's annual conference and all the energy that's around there. But I think that the whole idea is to bring that to Dallas. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great first lesson, and everyone's path through med school is different and college, and I agree with you. You can't you don't. Let me put it this way. I was a postdoc going to these bio DFW meetings at 7 a.m. in the morning at the UT Southwestern Faculty Library, I think is what was it called? Faculty Club, in the library building. And I was married. Well, I'm still married to a lovely radiologist. But she was like, "What the in the world are you doing?" I know I was getting dressed up with the top. It was a little bit more formal, like 25 years ago. I dressed my coat and I show up
Well,
there.
you made it now. You don't have to do that, but yeah.
Even now, and things have gotten a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, so I mean, she's like, you couldn't believe that I would go there, and I could not tell her what it is I was going to accomplish there, except hear a talk about some startup or some sort of a healthcare innovation type of person. I was in the lab. I was a postdoc. I was supposed to just keep my head down and do my thing, like you said. Don't ask too many. Well, let's not be mean here. You can give a lot of freedoms as a postdoc too to pursue
Yeah.
your research, but still, kind of like do your thing. You don't do deviant other things. And I did, and so you met people one at a time. And I see Cortland Immel is on here. Cortland was one of the people I met. Probably was still at UT Southwestern. And anyway, it's just keep an open mind, keep that spirit alive, and don't let. I mean, it's a tough school to go through. Ace College, obviously, to get into a great medical school, to get into a great residency, to get into a great fellowship, at which point you finally are there, and then you realize you're the lowest on the totem pole, and now you got to do all the weekends and night shifts, and then so you emerge in your mid late 30s as finally starting to stabilize a little bit, but that's exactly when you kind of have kids. So I mean, physicians have
The
it
second
really.
wave hits you, right?
Yeah. And so you're right. You kind of emerge from the whole thing in your late 40s, early 50s, thinking, okay, now about that thing I wanted to do. So
Right.
to your credit, you did exactly that, and others have too. And so I think it's very relatable to most
Yeah.
physicians, what you're
Yeah.
saying.
No, and yeah, I love your story and how you kind of, took your own journey and deviated a little bit from a predictable path. But I think it's important to remember at every single age and stage, it's hard. It's never easy. It's never the right time, because
That's
hey,
right.
when you're 18, you don't have a lot of risk in the sense you don't have a family to support. but you don't also have a lot of cash. You know, you're looking to build yourself and your career and get the nice job and the nice car and get things. So you have things you're sacrificing if you choose to strike out on your own ventures. And again, I consider that the price of autonomy. You know, to choose your own path is freedom. It's expensive. It's either financially expensive. You lose accolades, you know, praise from relatives, people who pat you on the back for doing the right thing. And I'm never saying my journey in a lot of ways is very conventional. You know, I did the things, you know, but within that, you know, navigating my own course, I took pleasure in the fact that every step along the way of being a physician, you always had these moments of decision making, of ability to dictate, you know, kind of what you think the best recommendations are, and those freedoms increase as your expertise increases and the tools and resources you have increase. So I think physicians just always should continue to embrace that, lean toward their own freedom of decision making, push back against all of the walls and barriers and resistance that we face. And probably the leap into research, the leap into device innovation, drug innovation, all that space is the riskiest. And it's not necessarily for everyone, but those with the mettle to do it, I think they're going to have a tremendous reward, you know, if they can persist. So, you know, it's a crazy place. Berkeley remains a crazy place. They came up with PCR, and then now the buzz is CRISPR, right? So it's like it continues to generate these technologies that are such game changers and so impactful, and continue to transform how we think about healthcare and what kind of tools we have. But again, to say when you were there, you would know, you wouldn't know. And innovation can come from anywhere, and it can be incredibly impactful all the same. So I'll say that this is a nice sort of first phase. And then now you're off to med school, and I'm going to pivot the conversation because I want to highlight something else, you know, that I think is meaningful and useful for entrepreneurs and anyone who's trying to find out what the right thing to do is, wants to listen to the experts, you know, wants to be a good soldier, especially in the context of healthcare. And there's a lot of different things I learned in med school, as we all did. But I came out around 1996 and 1997. And in that time, there was a physician named Dr. James Campbell. I don't know if people know that name off the top of their head, but he wrote about pain management. That was his area of expertise. And he said that pain is the fifth vital sign. That was sort of a catchphrase. Basically, he advocated in the sort of mid 90s that a patient's level of pain is this independent vital sign. You could give it a, you know, numerical scale, 0 to 10. That concept was probably already out there, but he emphasized that it's very important to bring pain down. And we were taught to use opiates. You know, we were taught you get rid of the pain wherever it may be coming from. And so as a medical student, as an intern, as a resident, that's what we did. You know, we would get calls from the floor and say, so-and-so is in pain. We'd like 2 milligrams of morphine. And we were very, very validated for doing that. We were patted on the back. Everyone said you were very attentive. Patients were satisfied. If we didn't, there was a sense of negligence. Like, you didn't take care of the pain. What kind of person are you, you know? But it created a monster, as we now know, right? So, you know, as you come out of the 90s, many more patients were exposed to opiates than they probably needed. I mean, there's a proper role for those kind of medications, but the use became sort of aggressive, sort of, you know, maybe I'm not going to say unregulated, because it was regulated, but it was a little too much for the situation. And then all the bad actors followed. So we had the opiate crisis that kind of unfolded in the early 2000s. And that was a lesson for me. And I still remember it to this day. I think about it every day, that pain scale and what I was told by people I trusted and people with good intentions. Nobody was out to hurt anybody. But the best intentions sometimes produce the worst outcomes. And that's like a famous quote. You know, I don't know, Oscar Wilde or somebody said that. But we have to always be vigilant. Use your, you know, you have to have your own inner voice and guiding, you know, thoughts. And sometimes they don't mesh with what you're being told. And I think that's important for physicians. We are so ingrained in trying to check all the boxes, make sure everyone's satisfied, keep people happy. But sometimes we're the last line of defense. We're the ones who have to say, that doesn't make sense. We have to push back a little bit. And you have to be sometimes the unpopular character when you do that. and it can be a lonely road. It can be a difficult road, but you can see what happens when that last line of defense collapses. You have bigger societal problems. And now the correction is in full swing, thankfully. And I think that people's use of these medications has become much more disciplined. We have a lot of people to help and help them get out of the situations that were created over the last 20, 25 years. And people working very diligently on that, which is super heartening. And you know, but also as we do that, let's not do more mistakes, right? Now, let's kind of be a little bit more thoughtful on our unintended consequences. So, you know, if I learned a ton in med school. This isn't the only thing I learned, but this is the thing I want others to think about: is that what you where your behaviors and thoughts might need more scrutiny, and it's something we can all reflect on being better as physicians, and innovators too, and the things that we try to tell people and what's around the corner, right? So anyway, I don't know what you think about that, and any experiences you have around that.
Yeah, I know. No, I think that's a very good illustration of keeping an open mind, and also realizing that something we promote could become, not on vogue in the future. So keep your own um, kind of radar antenna open, and allow your own inputs to make to trust your gut at certain levels. I know that's a touchy subject because obviously some physicians can go rogue with that and just start treating things in completely unscientific ways.
Yeah, yeah.
We've seen a good bit of that recently. But at the same time, as we are, assaulted on all sides with AI and with the uh, here's my spiel on physicians. It gets argued constantly that no, you're a little bit protected because you're in your hands-on profession, and so an AI computer can't do what you do until it is connected to a Da Vinci robot, maybe in 10 years or something. Who knows?
That's my
So
career window.
yeah, so you're still fine. Dan Dow here, who's a radiologist, he's already on the outside there.
He's
Those
done.
radiologists,
Yeah,
computers know it better. But here's
yeah.
the thing, especially when it comes to bedside and treating patients, this is where the whole thing breaks down. My usual statement to physicians is to go back and talk about the power of the mind, and uh, about personal trainers. So there's a whole industry of hundreds of billions of dollars that exists solely for the purpose of standing next to you while you do reps that any AI could tell you 17 times better. And yet people are willing to pay thousands of dollars a year for a personal trainer to stand next to you and basically just tell you what to do. If anything makes no sense, this makes no sense. And yet it works. And yet people know that they can get a better workout plan on their app and they still don't do it. And why is that? It's the same as with a physician. It's the power of the mind and the power of the personal touch. So in the physician's world, I wouldn't necessarily. I think it actually matters too to be literally just patted on the shoulder or whatever. But more importantly is the innate importance of another human who cares about you. Period. Full stop. And that, until it's emulated in a way that I literally get tricked into thinking the computer is a human, is not changeable. And the power, I know both of you have seen this in your practices, the power of that is unparalleled. It seems trivial and banal, but it isn't, because it is the willpower of individuals that can do unbelievable things just because somebody tells them, I believe in you, I think you can do this, you got this, and I'm going to do this, and everything's going to be better. And so the power of that connection, the power of what the influence of one human on another human is not logically explainable, because humans aren't logical. But humans do respond to another human being caring about them. And if that person is a specialist or competent in your field, it is absolutely magical. And so this is where art and science collide. Um, in a way that I think is amazing. And so there is a piece, and this is obviously a lot much poo-pooed these days with AI, that is art, that is distinct and different from the textbook science, that has powers that are beyond anything. And I always go back to the personal trainer model, because on the physician side, people might question you, and then you just go back to talk about personal trainers, and all the arguments fall apart, because it is not explainable. People on their free will. This isn't like paid by insurance. The personal trainer is like all private pay. Like, people are willing to do this, and it doesn't even feel good. It's not like a massage. It's like being tortured. Why?
Self-inflicted pain.
So
Yeah,
I think it's a beautiful
I
illustration,
love it. Yeah.
and it allows us, a lot better to explain why physicians have a lot more of an impact than just the knowledge that, obviously is under attack these days. So to your point, I think there's a lot to it, and being cross-trained and being able to relate to patients is a huge gift. And not everything has been explained, because a lot of it happens up here, and it's not in the science textbook, not even in the psychiatry textbooks.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think those are fantastic points, and a great example, because I almost don't work out unless my trainer is there. And I'm like I'm so guilty of this. And it's a luxury, and I get it, but I also am pragmatic. I'm like, I just won't. You know what I mean? If I don't have that person, I have all the apps, I have all the home gym equipment you could imagine, but I need the person, and the caring and intention and accountability that another human brings to your behavior can't be understated. But there's a lot of different philosophical thoughts around AI, and a lot of them are very dystopic, about removing the human from the equation, almost as like an end game, and you go down that rabbit hole, and you feel fear, and you feel trepidation. Is your career, is your purpose in life, is your meaning? But then you start looking at the true pace of change, and I hate to say this, but and I'll say it, and I don't want to, be overly negative, but almost every piece of technology that I use from like the information space, whether it's my email, whether it's my EHR, whether it's my various interfaces at work, have gotten worse. and they've gotten worse in a very tangible way over the last 5-10 years. They're more capable in a lot of ways. They have more features, they have more interconnectedness, but the actual experience of me using them is, if I could pick up a paper chart and flip through and get what I needed, it's almost like we don't do that ever now, but it's faster, it's more efficient in so many ways. So it's an odd sort of valley we're in, where technology is getting more and more powerful, but the usability features, the connectedness, the efficiency is not there. So that buys us some time in itself. But I'll say that when it gets there, it's still most likely, if it's going to be successful, we'll keep the human in center. We and our patient, or whatever that interaction is around your business model, will put the human in center and make them more powerful. So I can imagine a scenario where my patient and I have a very nice large screen of some kind in the office, and Perplexity is there, and we're answering questions together and looking up things together, and there's a flatness between our positions. We both have access to knowledge, and I'm the Sherpa. I'm like explaining to them what I think about it. They trust me because I do this all day, and I've seen so many patients. They trust the AI because it's the library of knowledge, and it's able to deliver the most precise information and the most up-to-date information. So it's a transformation of our careers, our jobs, and as they always have, right? Like, they always get tweaked and adjusted over hopefully reasonable timeframes that we can adapt ourselves and then find new purpose in our new jobs. And then there's scale. If we can do these things better, we can take care of more patients. You hear about physician shortages. I feel like there's a lot of unmet needs of just every human. If these technologies are sort of as amplifiers of care, then they will be good. We don't have to constantly have the scarcity mentality of, oh, I'm not going to be valuable. No, I'll be valuable and accessible. There's a lot to it, and I know you can give counter arguments on how these things could all go bad for us. But I'm very, very optimistic. I think that these tools are going to become increasingly powerful, and we're going to enjoy a type of access to the fruits of human knowledge like no other moment in human history, and anyone would be envious of us. Anyone in history would be envious of where we're at right now. So,
Well, I mean, also it's the last mile issue to your paper chart situation. How much more information can you download into humans, right? So, like you said, you've got all these channels, all these avenues. It's got to stick. And so, touching paper or having a physical book, or I read a couple of paper newspapers in the morning, most morning, it's a different form of intake. I call these old-fashioned things like a newspaper accidental exposure models. And if you grew up in a city where you walk, that is also a facet of your education. The accidental exposure to things you never sought to see. When we live in suburbia, we drive from home to work, work to home, home to grocery store and back. We never interface with other humans except to curse at them because they're all terrible drivers except me, of course. And so we never get to experience the things that are different from us and appreciate them. So this is very strange because I would never sign up. So if you have a list, so sign me up for going in a tramway. I grew up in Vienna, going in a tramway and have an experience with a drunken bum that bothers me. Like I would like, nope. Do you want
scratch
this?
it off.
Nope.
Yeah.
Do you want this? Nope. But the fact that these things exist as you are in a city, for instance, or as you read a newspaper that has, arguably 90% of the stuff that's in there is not stuff you would have ever sought out to read. And if you're interested in this or this, but you can read some about cooking and about some about local news and some about international. And it's in my case, it's two newspapers, a local and a national one, and then I'll augment with other things. I don't worry about this stuff too much. It's just as you get touched by these things, it gives you ideas. And innovation lives at that intersection of different experiences. Just like all the great inventors, or many of them, have seen something in one field and said, "What if we do it here? And what if we do it here?" And so often the very same thing. Let's do it in vessels, like in your case, but let's do it in smaller vessels, or let's sew them together, or let's so. I
Fantastic.
think that's the piece we shouldn't forget, because downloading ever more specific, only technical information our brain's not wired to, and then the different uptake mechanisms matter too. Audio. I do like Lindsay and Java know this. I'm like currently doing Duolingo for French, so
There you go.
anyway, it's kind of fun. I know French, so I get better. But that's audio, and then audiobooks, for instance. But I also read books, and so I think these so to challenge yourself, no matter who you are, where you are in your life, or how specialized you are at something, to not get stuck in just reading your specialty journals and get kind of. It's not going to lead to the innovation that you want to see happen in your field. You don't
A lot
get
of things happen at those
one lead.
intersections, right? Like we're two different fields, and it's one of the downsides of hyper specialized algorithms. Like I and as many of us, I looked at some golf videos on one of these social media platforms, and then I was just saturated with golf videos. It was thousands of them, and I didn't care anymore. I wanted it to stop trying to read my mind and let me move on to the next topic or the next topic. So over focusing on a particular area leaves out your ability to, like you said, read a paper newspaper and come across a new recipe for crepes or something that you would have never intentionally looked for. And the same thing happens in healthcare, where a lot of things are serendipity, but that's lost if we're overly channeled into a singular sort of thought process. So those are excellent points, and I agree with them. So
well, let's keep rolling with this is mid-career report, and
there's a couple of more highlights. I'll say this, and this is for anybody in the audience or anybody who ends up wanting to connect or reach out, that in the time, so I told you about the opiates. What else happened in my training period in cardiology is I was always sketching things. I'm a doodler and a sketcher, and sort of mentally conceptualizing different devices and technologies. And you asked me what I was doing, and I'll say that when I was, officing with you guys, it was, basically we were trying to develop a new platform for imaging using echocardiography. And I'll leave it at that. Anyone can reach out to talk more if they're interested. But I'll say that it is still there, and no one else has done it, and I don't know if anyone will. I had another pretty good idea, if you will, and I showed it to some people about an LVAD. It was a different LVAD than anything you've seen. Also pretty good. Also, people liked it. It's still sitting there, and it's those ideas that I say, well, I'm just going to keep an eye and see if someone invents this, right? Like you just kind of see what happens. Well, it's been 15 years. No one's invented it. And I'm wondering if it will happen in another 15 years. So the lesson there is some of your best ideas are already in your head. And some of the things you thought of when you're going through training or taking care of patients, they're actually really good. And if you do the follow-up work, you'll find that no one's executed on them. They're there. And your choice to execute is a very personal choice, whether you want to commit the time, energy, you see the upside. But a lot of great ideas are just through experience, through exposure, and they are locked up in experienced physicians who've seen the real world, who've seen the pros and cons, who've seen the failures, and they should be tapped. We should find a way, and we are. I mean, that's what the whole Health Wildcatters ecosystem facilitates, is getting those ideas out and into action. So I just want to say that before our time got too deep, that some of those things are also kind of just there. But I want to touch on a couple of experiences, and then kind of we may be getting close, but networking. Your friends become your network, who become your investors, who you become your consultants. Everything is entangled. So my roommate from medical school, who's done fantastic in life, just absolutely brilliant guy. He took a different journey. He did the same thing. He was an electrophysiologist in training at Harvard, and he said, I'm more interested in different things. He loved it, but he also had a passion for innovation. He ends up going to Stanford, getting his MBA, makes a lot of friends there, and he ends up working for Edwards Life Science, and he's like elite guy up there, so doing great. But he refers over a friend from Stanford, a buddy from his MBA program, named Amit Patel, and he could tell that our energies would resonate, that he was like, when they talked about stuff, he thought we would be friends too. So Amit reaches out to me in around 2012, and he's launching his own startup, and he had a very good idea, and it was especially innovative for that time frame. What was to make a telemetry monitoring system, in hospital telemetry monitoring. So when you have all these patients on tele, as we say, to make a sort of a lower cost one that was kind of more efficient in its use of energy, technology, hardware, and also was better at delivering interpretations of the ECG, automating the algorithm part. So that was their thesis. And the idea of this lower cost model was to go into emerging markets, places like India and China, where this could be monetized because people pay for their healthcare out of pocket. And there was scale. You could have hundreds of hospitals who wanted this for thousands and thousands of patients. That was their core thesis in 2012. And they came to me from the cardiology perspective, plus my just interest in innovation. And I became one of their main medical consultants and advisors through their journey. So they had an incredibly good, solid thesis, but they had tons of challenges as they went along. In the next, 6 years or 7 years, they pivoted. And that would be my lesson, again, to entrepreneurs, that you have your idea, but you constantly have to adapt it. They had to shrink their algorithm bit, expand on their cost savings bit, travel all over the place. They were going to India, they were going to China, they were constantly getting exposure to different possible consumers of it. And then one of their vendors, the people who they were buying supplies from to build their product, said, why are you buying all this stuff? What are you guys building? I said, well, let's show you. And they said, oh, we love what you're doing, we're going to buy your company. That ended up being their exit. So they had a fantastic exit. The company's called BIOS, and you can look up how they're doing, and they're continuing. The company sustained and is doing well and has very recent innovations that you can read about if you just Google them. So what I got out of that was a lot of exposure to a lot of great people. It was a social network that did it. It was serendipity. It wasn't, any design or intention. I learned a lot of hard lessons on how these startups survive from inception to exit. And a lot of it is you have your core thesis. If it's solid, you stick to it, but you have to keep modifying your game plan day to day. And I think a lot of people got a lot of gray hairs as part of this endeavor very, very quickly. But it was a journey of a lifetime, and those guys were very successful at the end of it. So I wanted to share that anecdote with everyone and let it motivate people and kind of guide them, as because times can be very hard when you're in the device innovation space. But you find success where you don't expect it, and you just persist. So.
Yeah, I mean, one key feature you're pointing out here is one that I'll vividly remember from an exit. Wasn't one of our companies, but somebody I knew quite well, and it was in the ophthalmology space, and he was an expert, and he had some research that were really good. But I mean, seeing that this deal was quite squirrely and in stage, like not even clinical yet, it was very raw. But what this CEO did, he religiously went to the 2 annual ophthalmology meetings, and he had, from a career in ophthalmology drug development, had these contacts, and he would give updates every half year to all his contacts, and those were all the companies that might end up acquiring his company. This is a pharmaceutical. And sure enough, eventually, long before it became commercially available, he chose to exit, and with the help of some VCs that had made investments in him, got a phenomenal mid 9-digit exit. So not a unicorn, but more than my money ever could need. And but it was his diligence in the updates that kind of stuck with me. Like to go to these meetings and to be booking, your Alcon and your whatever all the eye care companies are, meetings, and they watched him, over the years, and it's like, now we've done this, now we've done this, and eventually, when it came time to it, he had all the right connections, all the potential acquirers knew him, had seen him progress over many years. He's diligently he stayed on top of it, just like you mentioned with your buddy that ended up having this serendipitous exit. But generally, you run a process at the end that it sometimes it's called an auction, sometimes it's called a sale, where you ask for bids, and being known by these people and known for consistently updating them and consistently progressing along a line is a huge plus. I'm sure it was worth
absolutely
a 9 digits by itself, just that they did that.
Yeah. People invest in people. The technology is one thing, but their confidence in what you're saying and what you're delivering is based on familiarity. The human element always in center. It's not about the numbers and the PowerPoints and the scientific paper. It's the relationship, and not in a fluffy way, but in a real way. They know who you are. They know what you've done. You've got a track record. And building that track record probably was not easy. Probably this person was booking their own flights, paying their own hotel just to get 30 minutes in front of somebody who said, okay, thanks, I'll see you next year. Over and over again. I mean, the sacrifices, the little ones they're making along the way, you have to admire that tenacity. And then the payoff, and they took the risk, they got what they deserve, and they should enjoy it. And but I love it. I love that story, and I think it definitely is repeated. You see all the success stories have this same flavor of consistent behavior, execution, patience, relationship building, and then the moment of truth where you've done something and you're going to get rewarded. That's what the system craves. So if you want to try to say, well, what is the world looking for? That's what they're looking for. And it could be anybody who's on the receiving end of that. But if you bring that to the table, I think your chances of success are very good, right? So I'll kind of, if you will, wrap or kind of pull back the journey with what I'm doing now. So I do invest. I think that I've gotten to the point where I can kind of sift through ideas more efficiently, simply because of the time that I've spent in this space. And one of the very exciting investments is in a company called Surgical Automations, who you probably know, Sanket. And he's an embodiment of a lot of what I've talked about, but what you just said. And I'll just say that from my lens, when I see a guy like him and a company like that he's built, it's where I'll put my money where my mouth is. It's an informed investment, and what he's doing is making an automated endoscopy device that can perform colonoscopies, and that is he's just blazing a trail. You should definitely reach out to him to learn more about that. And I'll say that getting that contact and having the confidence to invest in it was driven by all these years and all these conversations and all the different things that I just talked about. And then really quick, the same company that had that wonderful exit that I described, I was a consultant. Well, those guys don't stop innovating, and they're the ones who've come up with a novel pacemaker system. And when they're looking around to do some clinical trials, we have great relations, and we get to be one of their implanting sites, one of the first in North America, which is going to be a tremendous feather in the cap of the Baylor Scott and White health system, and also just to be another piece of innovation that I think is going to be very, very helpful to patients going forward. So all these things come full circle. That's kind of where I'm at in my journey, and I appreciate you indulging all of these various anecdotes and stories. But yeah, anything you want to ask or any questions you have, feel free.
No, that's a great. So I just saw Sanket 2 days ago, and yeah, so we're in touch, and we're due to catch up. And I agree with you that stuff comes around on the back way. Somebody knows you from something, and then who are they going to call? They're going to call people they trust, people that have the right kind of level of integrity, people that they have experience with. And if you have those relationships, that there's nothing unfair in that. It's just a fact of like, yeah, well, why wouldn't I call my reliable people first? And that's great. We do see some of that, some of those innovations too on occasion. Just thinking of we had I cannot for the world of me think of the startup that was a pacing startup that had kind of almost like a wraparound um, uh, around the heart.
Epicardial kind of lead placement type thing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't exist. I mean, there's Cornova that you probably run across as well. It's been around for a long time, but it just had a pacing situation that was multiple different. So it would really like pace from the outside, but pace sequence that would like then get you the whole intended result, as opposed to just one or two locations where you hope
it's
on
more
that.
synchronized, right?
Yeah, so you do it complete external pacing with multiple spots that would just contract, cause the muscles to contract. So it was pretty cool. So there's really cool stuff out there. My dad was a EP cardiologist, so
oh, nice.
around pacemakers everywhere. I actually had a collection of them from the big hockey puck,
The original, right? Yeah.
implantable ones, all the way down to what we have today. But it's all very cool stuff, and there's still a lot of innovation to be made in that space. So yeah, no shortage of cool things, and I hope that the deal you're working on has now as well is going to be. And then you probably have run across Ken Nelson as well, who's big in the reporting cardiac monitoring space. One of our mentors here as well. But we can certainly take questions also from anyone. We still have 10 minutes. I know, Cortland, I've seen a couple of things from you. I don't know if there's a question. Is TI still investing in the pacemaker? I don't know if TI is investing in the pacemaker space, and I think the other two aren't really questions. So anybody has any questions, either unmute yourself and just ask, or write them in the Q&A field or chat field. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. So as Hubert mentioned, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. And as Hubert mentioned, radiologist by training. My father and grandfather were primary care physicians. My dad also practiced emergency medicine. You mentioned the importance of autonomy, which I 100% agree. And, that was something that was extremely important to me coming out of, residency to make sure that I found a group where, I believed that I could maintain, autonomy. I strong believer that you find autonomy or you create autonomy through physician entrepreneurship and ownership. And once, as physicians, once we give up ownership, we lose autonomy. And I think that's obviously what's happened, with healthcare over the past 40 years, 45 years for sure. I mean, go back to the early 80s and, 76% of physicians owned their own practices and, probably the others worked for other physicians, whereas now it's over 80% are employees of healthcare systems, hospitals, private equity, insurance companies, things like that. So I'm just curious. I mean, I definitely have my own ideas, but I'm curious. Both of us are, similar age. I'm a little bit older. But what can we do? The middle-aged guys and the older guys, what can we do collectively to, try to restore autonomy for currently practicing physicians and obviously the next generation?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Now, in full disclosure, I am employed. So I live in the cocoon, right? Like of an employed model. And it's very good to me. I get tons of support from my employer. We're able to execute and deliver. But when you look at it from a system level, like kind of how all of our behavior starts to become effective, that's where the concerns arise, obviously. And we're not always aware of our own biases. So I'm sure there are some, but we'll leave it at that. Where do I see opportunity? So, we're very intelligent, but I would say that physicians tend to operate more like monkeys than leopards. And so what I mean is when we see change, we swing from tree to tree, but we make sure we're holding on to one rope before we grab the next. Whereas a leopard jumps, sees if it can stick the landing. If it can't, so what? We're always going to swing from tree to tree. And so what we need to do and build is an ecosystem where it's safe for physicians to come out of these big employment models and make a decent living in a private model. That's a complicated ask because it takes physician leaders to sacrifice their time. Why do I need to solve this problem for you? I'm just trying to make my own living. But it can be done. I think social networking can help. I think that you're going to see a turning point where overhead costs, which only go one direction, may become unsustainable for these large physician-owned operations. And then the thrifty smaller groups can suddenly have an economic argument. A lot of it is in these handheld devices, the power of AI in the true sense of automating your front office, automating your back office, keeping yourself very lean, and still delivering a very high quality product. There's an opportunity there now. There's a lot of work to be done, but if you can do that and show people the way that say, hey, this group survived, not only that, they thrived, people will join. But everything in life is an intention first. You have to be determined to do it. It won't just you won't stumble into freedom, right? So, but I think you emphasize that when you were making your practice choices on where to work. And I think people get it. I mean, I don't think any generation is monolithic. I think there's young people who also have this sort of feel of like, how do I, have a more unique opportunity? And there's people who grind and they're young. They're not like all looking for the long vacation time, but you have to sort of, collect these kind of people into tribes. And that's sort of my hope, and even in this stage of my career, I think, I've had a lot of thoughts about making our operations more efficient. And recently, just because of so many economic forces, I hear that even my organization is becoming more responsive to that and wanting to learn how to do that. So again, just maybe I'm being a little bit, overly optimistic, but I do think that when you become autonomous, they can also unload their problems on you. So that's why they're attracted to it, right? It's not just altruism. They're like, oh, let the physicians run it because they keep saying they know how to. they might just let us, and that would be an interesting kind of sort of kind of things aligning in our favor, if you will. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I mean, I share your thoughts, and I share definitely your sentiments about it. And something I've discussed a little bit with Hubert too is I'm involved with a healthcare startup. We do digital marketing, and then we have a venture fund and plans for expansion. But one of the thoughts is a venture studio. I mean, obviously, venture studios exist for healthcare startups, but how about we have a venture studio for physicians to launch their own clinical practices, and especially focus on residents that are coming right out of training, and that way they never get the taste of or the the bitter taste of being an employee. So.
yeah, and then they get acclimated to running their own ship, and that's something they don't want to give up after a few years. They're like, no, this is a better way to do it. So I like it. I think that's I'd love to connect with you, put it that way, on brainstorming and kind of building something like that for real. So,
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
we'll connect you. Well, I know we're at time, but if you have any closing thoughts, I want to certainly leave them out to you. I don't think we have any questions pending right now.
yeah.
So
No, I super enjoyed it. I hope people reach out and connect with their ideas, motivation. Again, it's amazing how many people are dystopic and concerned and worried about AI putting us out of work or doing something drastic, terrible. I see it as very strongly the opposite. I think it's going to give us a body of armor, ability to do things almost like that we didn't think was possible. And the nightmare scenarios are always there in science fiction, but humans are still the center of everything, and the patient-physician relationship is the center of everything. So we should embrace this as an incredibly awesome opportunity. So
yeah, until ChatGPT downloads all your information, then sends the automated assassins, the robots to your house with
drones are coming.
guns on the dogs that are just gonna shoot you.
The only
Until
thing
that,
is, the comfort I take is they can already kill us if they want to. So
yeah, especially if you drive an automatic electric car.
drive you off the road. So the fact that they don't tells you there's someone nice behind the curtains. so hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. It's certainly two ways you can look at it, and I think yeah, I mean, entrepreneurs are optimistic by nature. I think as a physician, it's the right attitude to take. It's like, yeah, I mean, the thing about like, oh no, they're going to take our jobs. I mean, this is what people said about losing their coal mining jobs, or or the manual labor jobs of manufacturing before factories came in, and you say, okay, don't. I mean, how about a nicer job? Because
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
when these things happen, yes, there change, and change is never fun for most people. But the fact of the matter is, yes, there may be a lot of jobs that aren't there anymore. But is bus driving really a joy?
Yes. Yes.
I love driving cars. Do I like driving the same route every day? Probably
Yeah.
no. Shoot me now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's just kind of, those are the type of things that you just keep an open mind. How about you can do something really cool instead?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
never going to happen. If you
Yeah.
have a house that, I don't know, with the jacuzzi and all these things, and then there's one that can also give you automatic massages. There's
Yeah.
just no end
There's
to,
infinite
yeah,
opportunity for improvement, infinite. And there's infinite new problems. If we've solved every problem, we can think of something different. We can go to Jupiter and build flying, you know what I mean? The
yeah,
universe is so massive. We should never ever think that we're going to run out of opportunities. It's
yeah.
just not true. So
Agreed. So the job loss thing, I don't worry about too much, but change is
transformation is
inevitable.
coming. Yeah. But
Change is
loss and
inevitable, and I think it is an amazing time to live in, where things change by the minute, hour, day, which is it's just unprecedented. So can we keep up? No, I think there's an attitude of absorbing information has to be built into you and your kids to be willing to learn and adapt, and embrace the newest tools to become a digital native in AI tools, for instance. is a big plus. Well, we'll stop here because we could also just go down to the next pub and from here on out share war stories and exchange wisdom. But thank you, Amit, once again for joining us. This was especially fun today. Dan also had previously joined us, and we had a great discussion as well around his experiences, and it continues to be a journey for all of us. And there's just a lot of physicians out there that have entrepreneurial aspirations, ideas, and can do stuff. And this group is really a group to connect us to each other and encourage each other that it can be done.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for making this happen. I appreciate it. It was a lot
Thanks
of fun.
for joining us. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.